𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐤 metuneka. A title that for many indie gamers needs no introduction, Tchia is out in all its adventure and physics-driven sandbox glory. After having completed the game in roughly 15 hours, including my completionist hunted down every collectible in the game time, I feel ready to give my final thoughts on the press-build version we were given. Take control of Tchia, a young girl who lived a peaceful, quiet life with her father on an island in a tropical paradise, inspired by New Caledonia. Tchia enjoys nights filled with music made from leaves, drums, and ukuleles, which are a returning feature in this game. But one day, when a friend named Trey visits and stays overnight, they're suddenly attacked by a mysterious figure that flies in, wielding a machete and accompanied by fabric-based minions. In the kerfuffle, Tchia's father is kidnapped and she leaps towards the aircraft to save him, and then her eye glows green and she discovers she has a unique power. This power is called soul jumping, and it's not limited to the typical humanistic theology of the West. Leap into the bodies of birds, dogs, and turtles, but also lamps, rocks, and logs engulfed in flames, to name a few. Every creature or object with this soul-jumping potential can provide unique benefits. Soar above the stunning verdant mountains of these islands as a bird, and with an on-command poop button. If the sight of flying as a cute flower-adorned bird is too wholesome for your taste, ruin it with poop. Or leap through the waves and speed through the ocean as a dolphin, offering a fast and fun way to reach new areas or collectible pearls on the seabed. Or turn into a lamp and launch yourself at the combustible fabric and wood minions called the Mano that have set up camps all over the islands, and you'll explode them into colorful sparks and ribbons. With this newly realized power, Tchia is sent off by Trey to find her father, who you soon learn was kidnapped under the orders of 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐬, the new evil ruler of the archipelago. And that about sums up the premise of this story: a young girl trying to rescue her father and learning more about the mysteries surrounding the island, the new evil oligarch, and the protagonist herself. Now, let's return to the gameplay. I have to say that the soul jumping mechanic is a blast. I loved it. Whether you jump into the body of a dog and run as fast as your soul meter allows, or travel using that impulse of exiting and entering soul jumps, it was a super fun mechanic to get around a gorgeous environment. Not to mention that some of these creatures and objects have special abilities, like you can ignite as a fuel can or pinch as a crab, as well as less useful abilities like the aforementioned bird pooping. And all of these new forms are marked with Tchia's signature yellow flower that her father gifted her, making it clear that she is the one in control of the vessel. Tchia has a few other tools for this quest. Her trusty glider, allowing her to drift down from heights. Her ramshackle raft, of which she controls the speed and direction separately, requiring careful coordination. Her slingshot, for smacking foes and knocking down coconuts. And her ukulele, which she unlocks new songs for that can do things like change the time of day, summon animals, sprout leap-enhancing vegetation, again, to name just a few. I must admit that when I started the game, all of these different abilities and mechanics felt like a lot. When do I soul jump? When do I use the ukulele? When should I swim places or use the raft? My questions turned out to be indicative of my inexperience with open world games after having played so many linear indies. Because it turns out, what's the answer to all these questions? Do it now! All the time. Just do it. As you venture through the islands, you'll find vantage points where you can release a piercing shout into the sky, which reveals new locations on your minimap. Your minimap and compass are tools that will be instrumental to finding locales when you first start, and as you become familiar with the islands, you'll find yourself relying on them less and less, just for the trickiest of collectibles. You can also mark places on your map, which leaves a red indicator on the compass that you can follow. Thankfully, the compass can remain on your screen as you travel, giving you a quick indicator of whether you're heading in the right direction. Another fun exploration feature, which are the lifeblood of this open world title, is Tchia's climbing. Despite living on a small island, she has the climbing skills of a jungle gym expert, scaling cliff sides with ease. That is, until her stamina runs out. Then she hits the ground like a sack of potatoes, and I feel a bit guilty. And while your starting stamina is quite weak, you'll be able to collect glittering yellow stamina fruit that slowly increase your stamina meter with each one you consume. So, there's an incentive, besides how fun and fulfilling traveling the islands are, to explore these tropical environments and find the many collectibles they have hidden within. What collectibles, you may ask? Well, you've got the stamina fruit, of course, as well as braided trinkets, pearls, and treasure chests. The braided trinkets and pearls are used in one quest, but otherwise are the currency to purchase some in-game customization options for Tchia and her raft. Dress like a pilot or adorn your sails with flowers. And if you don't like the options for purchase, try your hand at the claw machine, which has unique decor you can't find anywhere else. Just be sure to collect trophies to use the claw machines, which you can earn from the abundance of minigames Tchia has to offer. Try your hand at diving, target practice, soul-shifting races, treasure hunting, and Zen rock stacking, which has the added benefit of expanding your soul songs for your ukulele. Don't forget the totem carving either, where you carve wood into different faces to match the totem shrine you wish to enter. Why enter? Because after completing the puzzles within, you'll get an expansion to your soul meter, allowing you to remain in the soul jump for longer. Alright, so I've talked about your many abilities, the minigames, moving around the map, but what about the story? This is where my review takes a bit of a dip, because in all honesty, I did not find the narrative to be compelling. Not everyone may have this experience, but it was painfully clear to me from their overt attempts to build a father-daughter relationship in the opening cutscenes that someone was gonna die or get hurt, or, in this case, get kidnapped. On top of that, I didn't find the emotional appeals to be well developed. We just aren't with these characters long enough to care, and their characterization resembles a fable more than a modern story. This may be the choice of the team, since they went to great lengths in crafting a game that is representative of a unique and underappreciated culture. However, going full fable comes with a cost, and that's emotional attachment to the characters because they end up being flat devices for the plot, which is why classic fables rely less on characters and more on plot points to compel audiences. It also isn't helped by the stoic nature of Tchia, who rarely sheds a tear despite the many traumatizing experiences that she endures on her journey. All of this is not to say that there aren't interesting moments in the plot, but even within these interesting moments, some parts felt out of place. In fact, Tchia was a bit more brutal than I had expected, and some scenes really shocked me. Not because of rated R gore, which there's none of, but for the sudden break in tone. I won't offer more details in an effort to avoid spoilers, but I found these moments to be jarring and out of sync with the art style and themes of the game thus far. But I must happily admit, there were plot points that felt exciting. And most of these began in the second half of the game, where the stakes were raised exponentially. So let's just say there may or may not be mysterious individuals, creatures, islands, and revelations, adding much needed depth to the story and its characters. Weaved into the story beats and cutscenes are musical ensembles, where you strum your ukulele in time to well-produced songs that grow in difficulty. And here's where the negativity comes again. I hated most of these songs and their beat matching gameplay. There's nothing wrong with these songs or their compositions, except I would argue the first couple of songs where you play a literal leaf, but I personally couldn't find the desire to play along. Blissfully, you can put these songs on autoplay and even skip these parts altogether, which I must admit I did after the third or fourth song. End of the day, the music was not my preferred genre and the rhythm elements felt dull, which is probably due to the fact that I didn't care for the songs. Your mileage may vary. A small phobia warning I'd like to offer about the ocean water diving. If you have a fear of open ocean, maybe check out the gameplay here and other videos before making a decision. As far as my playthrough is concerned, there was only one quest in which I had to dive into the ocean and collect 3 pearls. Otherwise, it's optional. You can find these pearls only by diving underwater, with some locations more shallow than others. I must admit, at certain points in my dives, I did find myself a bit unnerved at the depth and vastness of the ocean, even while knowing that there are no hostile creatures in the waters. Yes, even the sharks aren't hostile in this game. Only the humans. But these tended to be in more remote pearl locations in the middle of the ocean, which you don't have to go for. So take some time to investigate whether these elements will harm your experience with the game, even if there's only one quest that involves pearl diving. Unfortunately, I must continue to offer more points of criticism for this game, which may or may not be relevant for the final build. In the version that I received, there were quite a few bugs. Bugs that the developers acknowledged, but bugs nonetheless. Some bugs were light ones that I actually loved, like the random T-posing characters, which one could argue are a bonus. Others were game-crashing bugs that happened in my favorite sections, the musical scenes. And it always happened when I pressed the button to have the songs autoplay, which is what finally led me to just skipping these parts altogether. Outside of these bugs, which again the team did state that they were going to have ironed out for the full public release, I think the game could have used more tutorials. For having an introduction that felt painstakingly long, and really it wasn't, but that's more of an indicator of my boredom with the story cutscenes and its characters, I found that many gameplay elements were left unexplained. Like how I didn't figure out I could climb and slingshot myself out of most trees, which would have helped me get around faster in the early part of the game. I only found out by looking at some trailer videos, and later I saw it was in some tooltips in between scenes. Or the diving and jumping flare mechanics, which might have encouraged me to give the diving minigames more than one try. Or the treasure hunting side quests, which I could not figure out for the life of me. Again, as I said earlier, this information does show up as tooltips while the game is loading, but I don't think tooltips are enough for such important information. You know, I think we should do more than just casually tossing it up in these screens that I argue most gamers aren't paying the most attention to. This, however, is a minor nitpick, and with the knowledge from this video, and those made by the developers themselves, you probably won't find yourself making the same missteps that I did. And I say this because despite my issues with the plot, the musical scenes, and the lack of sufficient tutorials, I had a really good time playing Tchia. Is it an earth-shattering video game that will stick with you for decades to come? Probably not, unless you're from New Caledonia and you would love to see your culture brought to light in a new piece of media. But is Tchia an impressively designed and visually striking video game with addictive gameplay loops and a world worth exploring? Absolutely. Tchia is a fun, beautiful, and ambitious game that I have returned to even after completing the story for the review. I love the world these developers have designed, and most of all, I love shitting as a pigeon to the backdrop of a sunset.